Warhammer 40,000 is one of the most important franchises to me, but surprisingly one that I've rarely talked about. Recently I felt the need to play through the old Dawn of War video game franchise, one of my favourite video game series of all time, and make another video project that nobody will watch. This is the start of my retrospective of the Dawn of War series, so let's not waste any time. Okay, well, I'll explain what it is we're even talking about, because I'm sure there are plenty of people here who know that Warhammer 40k exists, and might know that it's an overpowered science fiction franchise, and that's all, so I should probably explain a bit more. Warhammer 40,000 is a tabletop game wherein players will buy miniatures that they paint themselves to form large armies of various factions and face each other in, well, whatever they want, either small skirmishes or massive campaigns created by the players. The story of Warhammer 40,000 is one of ongoing war. Humanity has formed the Imperium of Man, a mass militarized, highly advanced society all devoted to worshipping the God Emperor of mankind and executing all the Xenos. Dawn of War is mostly about the battles that occur in this setting between the Imperium of Man and every other army. Not just them versus the Imperium of Man, but also their internal squabbles. There really are no good guys or bad guys in this setting. Everyone is sort of out for themselves. It doesn't often have much story as a whole, as it's open for people to make stories in the form of books, white dwarf magazines, and video games as to expand on the world. Though there are some major storylines that have occurred, such as the Horus Heresy and the creation of Slaanesh. Dawn of War, meanwhile, is a video game based on this tabletop game, a real-time strategy-based army building game where you go through your tech tree through upgrades, buildings, and resource management. In Dawn of War, 4 armies feature, each one having a role in the main campaign. The story of Dawn of War features you playing as the Space Marines, super soldiers of the Imperium of Man, genetically engineered with technology to an unimaginable degree, standing at over 2 meters tall and wearing nearly invincible suits of armor. Coming in chapters representing different sorts of factions of Space Marines, we play the Blood Ravens chapter. The Blood Ravens are an incredibly elusive Space Marine chapter, not in that their existence is unknown, but that their origins and history are steeped in mystery and confusion, with an abnormally high amount of psychers, battle brothers possessing incredible supernatural abilities, and a really cool dark red color scheme. In the game, a company of Blood Ravens arrive on the planet of Tartarus, an imperial colony under assault from the Orcs, an army of green-skinned, well, space Orcs, brutish and large beasts who seek nothing but a good fight and a good win, possessing weapons recycled from other armies or put together from random bits of garbage, and coming in massive swarms that make them difficult to stamp out in spite of the low intelligence most of them possess. Led by Gabriel Angelos, the Blood Ravens descend upon the planet to stamp out the Orc warband, alongside the Imperial Guard, the Imperium of Man's core of regular human soldiers who possess massive tanks of unparalleled power. After a series of battles eliminating the Orcs' core leaders, it is revealed that the Orcs, led by Orc Among Us, were actually being manipulated by the forces of Chaos, a group of traitorous Space Marines and heretics who turned their back on the God Emperor and fell to the forces of the Chaos Gods. 4 nigh omnipotent beings that exist outside of the material world, beyond all dimensions and existence, sitting upon the universe itself. The Chaos Sorceress, Sindri Mia, and his commander, Lord Bale, were actually assisting the Orcs in their goal of getting the Space Marines down to the world for a good fight, intent on using the Orcs as distractions for their own machinations, spotted briefly by a Space Marine scout. Out of nowhere, the Inquisitor Toth descends to the planet and orders the Blood Ravens to evacuate the world due to an oncoming warp storm which will destroy it. Angelos tells him to get fucked and continues his investigation into the forces of chaos. We also meet Isidore, a librarian, or psyker, or magic super soldier Space Marine Ubermensch and longtime battle brother of Angelos. As it turns out, Gabriel questions himself due to having recently ordered a planet-wide orbital obliteration of his homeworld Cyrene, killing everyone on the planet, innocent or not, due to the taint of chaos that had rooted itself there. Toth believes this means Angelos is seeing chaos where it doesn't really exist. With the newfound presence of chaos, the Blood Ravens march in search of answers, and encounter the Eldar, one of the most ancient races in the universe, arrogant and douchebaggy space elves with incredible powers and technology, who are currently on the verge of extinction. Congrats. During their battles against the forces of Eldar and Chaos, the Blood Ravens undercover sacrificial sites of Chaos, and decimate the Eldar Craftworld's main forces, wherein the Chaos Sorcerer Sindri appears once more to take an artifact of importance, though the importance is not yet revealed. Though not truly working together, the Farseer Marcus ceases battle with the Blood Ravens and escapes to continue the fight later. The whole time, the librarian Isidore has been manipulated by Sindri into harboring Chaos artifacts, and has been hindering the Blood Ravens in minor ways. Led on by the words of Farseer Marker, the Blood Ravens track the Alpha Legion of Chaos to an Imperial Temple, where they strangely get attacked by Imperial Guardsmen corrupted by the forces of Chaos to turn against them. Once again, Sindri and Lord Bale evade capture, but this time when confronted with Inquisitor Toth, the Blood Ravens at least get answers. According to Toth, thousands of years ago, the Eldar imprisoned a demon of great power within the world of Tartarus, through a stone known as the Maledictum. The Maledictum influences others' minds to serve its will, and summons warp storms to prevent them from evacuating the planet. The Eldar were here to ensure the forces of chaos could not unearth the stone, and refused to cooperate with mankind out of sheer arrogance. Making amends, Angelos and Toth advance on the Alpha Legion to stop their unholy ritual, the one that will bring forth the Maledictum, eventually slaying Lord Bael after Sindri abandoned him. But they also fail to stop the ritual, and once it is completed, the traitor Isidore takes the stone and departs with Sindri. Toth states that he sensed the taint of chaos, but in his blindness assumed that it came from Angelos due to Angelos' extermination upon his homeworld, only to see it was Isidore that was corrupt. With all his wrath, Angelos leads his Blood Ravens to destroy Isidore's forces and slays him one-on-one in battle, overcoming his taunts and rallying his Blood Ravens for the final fight. Toth grants Angelos the usage of his demon hammer, Godsplitter, and they march upon the forces of chaos one last time, assisted by the minuscule remaining forces of the Eldar and faced with the might of a greater demon, the Bloodthirster. And finally, they manage to put down the forces of chaos and Sindri himself once and for all. However, following the words of his Inquisitor and ignoring the pleas of Farsia Marca, Angelos destroys the Maledictum and inadvertently frees the demon within. The demon tells him that the entire planet was a sacrificial altar to the Chaos Blood God Khorne, and every single death that had occurred on it, all the blood spilled in this campaign, allowed the demon to survive the Maledictum's destruction and instead become free. Had the Blood Ravens known, they may have destroyed it before the bloodshed became too great and actually killed the demon, but instead, it is free. As the forces of the Imperium of Man and the Eldar evacuate the world, the demon laughs, having won. Angelos, however, leaves it with a warning. The Blood Ravens will bring the demon's demise someday. They know him now. The story is nothing groundbreaking, but it is an effective and well-written one, with a few twists and turns thrown in for a little bit of flair, and a few interesting plot developments, carried by the strength of its simple but entertaining characters. Gabriel Angelos is honestly a pretty interesting protagonist. He shares all the failings of the Imperium of Man in general. He hates any and all aliens, he's merciless and will bring death to those who turn against mankind. He isn't really a good guy, but he does act in service of mankind. But the act of destroying his homeworld was enough to shake his resolve. While he does not falter in service to the God Emperor, he does falter in believing in himself, only to regain that resolve when his best friend turns against him and he realizes that the root of chaos is easy to miss, and he can no longer blame himself. Alongside him, Inquisitor Toth and Brother Isidore are far from the most complex, but they're good enough. Toth is fine enough and Isidore turns bad, which kinda sucks, but you can understand his logic, and he was manipulated by Sindri, a very effective villain who manipulates everyone to his gain, and in the end actually succeeds in his final goal despite his death. This is alongside the rather daft Lord Bael, who's really only saved by the fact that he's voiced by Scott McNeil, and I love Scott McNeil. Farsia Marca, meanwhile, is mostly interesting as supplementary material that discusses Marca and Angelos having some kind of bond, and Angelos, despite being anti-Xeno, is regarded well by the Eldar as of the hidden heart. Thinking about it, there's really not a whole lot to say about the story. It's a decent one without being terribly special. I like the Eldar teaming up in the final mission. I'm not terribly fond of how the Orcs have no place in the final battle. I think it probably would have been cool and a bit more challenging to throw them in as a wild card that goes after everyone, and also maybe make the Eldar a bit more of an active force during it. It's not big, but I feel like it'd be better. If anything, the story may be a bit too short. It's 12 missions, which vary from nice and long to disappointingly short. It would have been nice to see a bit more. You also only get to play as the Space Marines, which isn't too big a deal, but it would have been nice to have the option to play as other armies given they are playable elsewhere in the game. And speaking of playing, let's go to the gameplay. In the game, you command your military and build the units to advance your tech tree to gain access to more powerful units with different abilities, stats, and war gear specialized for different uses. Throughout the campaign, you unlock more powerful units as the story goes as well, with some not usable in earlier levels until the Blood Ravens are allowed to bring them forth. You also have to manage two main resources, Requisition and Power. Requisition can be gathered by having your units capture strategic points, critical locations, and relics, which all have different uses. Strategic points grant requisition, and you can have listening posts built on top to reinforce them so your opposition cannot take them as easily. These posts can also be upgraded with multiple levels of heavy firepower so they can defend themselves. Critical locations exist, and relics give you access to the relic units, the big, most powerful units of your army. Power, meanwhile, is done through the construction of plasma generators, which require requisition to build. Requisition, by the way, is also available in small amounts as long as your base is intact, and your base is given to you at the start along with your commander unit and builder unit for free. In the campaign, you also get any random units the level chooses to give you. That's the basic gist of the gameplay, and honestly, it's really fun. Building your units, setting them around the area, capturing strategic points, and upgrading your base so you can make more powerful things is really fun. You can play the game either slow and defensive, where you set up an impenetrable base and launch a big assault once your army is set up, or fast and brutal, where you keep attacking in waves until your opposition is destroyed. Different units also have different abilities that can be fun to use, be they something as brutally powerful as a Space Marine Orbital Bombardment or the Eldar Force Storm, or as simple as just teleportation or grenades. You also have to keep in mind your vehicle and squad cap. Each unit has both a requisition and potentially power cost, but often a cost in cap. Weaker units use up less cap, while stronger units use up more cap, with army sizes having limits to how far they can go. Stupidly, some builder units also counter the cap, which won't last long in this series. It makes it a game that is both tactical and fun, managing resources, building your tech tree up, and planning your attacks. When it comes to winning missions, in the campaign it will generally depend on the mission itself. It can range from destroying enemy forces, killing a certain individual, or reaching a certain point with your units, with the game generally not being too confusing in terms of how you get past certain things, and admittedly it can lack difficulty sometimes. It's not too bad, but it can be noticeable. In skirmish mode, however, victory is achieved through annihilation or take and hold. Take and hold requires an army or team of armies to capture either more strategic points or critical locations, usually 2/3 of what's on the map, and hold them for long enough. If an enemy can capture one of your points, well, you can't really win. Annihilation, however, requires a player to destroy every single building the opposing side has that's capable of producing enemy units. With a few exceptions, like the Space Marine listening post, that'd be stupid. Basically, destroy all of their important buildings and you win. Speaking of skirmish mode, that's actually where you can play the other armies, and let's go over the armies in this game while we're here. First off, all armies share a few basic similarities: a main base, a barracks, a vehicle bay, turrets, landmines, generators, bigger generators that can only build on slag deposits, and a building dedicated to research. But let's talk about the individual armies. Space Marines. The Space Marine army is fairly standard. Their troops are all generally pretty strong, with their primary ground troops, the tactical marines, able to upgrade with various heavy weapons, from anti-infantry flamethrowers to high-powered heavy bolters to the anti-building and vehicle rocket launchers. They also have Scout Marines who can go invisible and are uniquely allowed long-range sniper rifles, and Assault Marines who are melee Space Marines capable of jumping terrain with their jump packs. Their vehicles are also fairly standard, with a heavy walker that can be outfitted with extra guns, or an alternate version of that walker that forgoes any melee weaponry for raw firepower, a transport tank that features no weaponry whatsoever, and several powerful tanks including their relic, the Land Raider. An extremely powerful juggernaut of a tank with anti-vehicle and infantry weapons that is the only vehicle capable of transporting Terminators, the most powerful infantry unit that can come in both range and melee flavors. They are dropped in from space wherever your units are, be they dropped near your units to assist them or dropped into enemy lines by getting some invisible scouts in there to get your line of sight in. The Space Marines also have access to the Orbital Relay, which uniquely allows them to send any infantry units to wherever they have line of sight on a map, and drops dreadnoughts in there as well. Be careful though, as you can only build one, so you need to make sure that your units can get there pretty easily. Finally, they have access to the Force Commander and Librarian as their commander units, the latter of which has some pretty powerful psychic abilities that you can get with the right research. Overall, a strong army that is about as vanilla as they get, in that it's highly effective without having any special gimmicks. It's just generally pretty good. Chaos Space Marines. And not straying too far from that formula are Chaos. For the most part, they have a lot of identical units and tanks, with their buildings even mostly being identical, just malformed and demented with bits of flesh writhing within the walls. They do differ in a few places though. They lack the Space Marines Land Raider and have access to less Space Marine types, but a few demons, including Possessed Marines, Horrors, and Big Chonky Boys. Their Walker is also slightly different, possessing a heavy artillery cannon and no customizability. The biggest difference however is probably their relic unit. Instead of the ranged firepower of a Land Raider, researching the Bloodthirster gives you the capacity to sacrifice a sorcerer, aspiring champion, or commander, and turn him into a big ass flying demon who can do some serious melee damage. Aside from that, Chaos isn't much of an army compared to Space Marines, they're not that different. Space Marines but with demons, that's about it. Eldar. The Eldar offer something different however. While the Space Marine armies upgrade their bases to get units, Eldar actually do something else. Not only do they have builder units capable of actually fighting and probably being the most powerful individual units until the Soulstorm expansion of the builders, but they can also teleport, which can be useful if they get caught in a bad situation and you need to get them out of it. Additionally, Eldar units require extra research to bring out, with the exception of their primary and only commander unit, the Farseer, who possesses a ton of powerful combat abilities and a few of their basic units, namely their Guardians who are weak infantry troops, the Seer Council, a massive squad of 15 powerful elite melee units, and the Falcon Grav Tank, one of 3 hover vehicles the Eldar possess. Not only do they move faster than grounded vehicles, they can also fly limited distances. When researched however, the Eldar also gain access to the powerful Wraith Lord and Fire Prison vehicles, extremely strong melee and ranged units respectively, as well as highly specialized infantry units, the anti-infantry Dark Reapers, the melee-focused Howling Banshees, and the teleporting powerful Warp Spiders. Additionally, the Eldar tech tree actually revolves around a shrine that allows them to mobilize the war, and then grants them the ability to create the rest of what they need, leading up to the avatar of Kayla Mencha Kane, their relic unit, a massive melee combat beast that both deals insane damage and also passively boosts everything on the Eldar field. He makes all of their buildings produce units quicker, he increases the squad and vehicle caps, and he boosts morale. Eldar not only work differently, they also increase their vehicle and squad caps uniquely through the usage of webway gates. Webway gates can be built anywhere, and not only do they have passive bonuses, but they also grant the Eldar's greatest weapon, maneuverability. Not only can they go into webway gates and teleport to any location a webway gate is placed on the map, but with the right research they can teleport entire bases and heal all the buildings nearby. Combined with most Eldar units having high movement speed or ways to bypass terrain like flight and teleportation, the army is incredibly mobile, able to hit and run and go anywhere on the map they have placed a webway gate, overall making the Eldar a fun army for people who want to take quick jabs at their enemy and strike suddenly and swiftly, rewarding players who set up the terrain to their advantage with webway gates to grant themselves elusiveness as well. Orcs. And the final army of this game, the Orcs. They're fairly different, but also really simple. While they do have the same upgrade the base and collect resources things, Orcs also work on a resource called Orc Pop, a resource that every single individual unit, not just squads, costs and can reach way beyond normal cap. Orc Pop is gained by building War banners, turrets that can be built infinitely and increase your War level, unlocking new units and buildings. All Orc buildings hilariously have guns as well to make attacking an Orc base even harder than others. Orc armies are also built around mostly large armies and melee combat. While having ranged units, some of which being extremely powerful like the looted tank Leman Russ, Orc armies are almost all melee, with a ton of units dedicated solely to melee combat, coming in massive swarms of hundreds of units upgraded to the shit, with vehicles that range from fast hit and run trucks and tracks, walkers and their relic unit the Squigoth, a massive dinosaur mammoth thing with a ton of guns on its back. Orc strategy really is as simple as swarm the shit out of your enemy, which works really well and can be really fun. There's just not a lot to say with Orcs, they're fun and simple. Build up a ton of War banners, create a huge swarm of slugger boys, shooter boys, knobs and tank busters backed up with vehicles, and go. In the end, all armies are surprisingly well balanced and all fun to play in their own way, brought to life through the game's incredible voice acting and honestly pretty decent graphics. The graphics aren't mind-blowing or anything, but it is a game from 2004 and at a distance you normally see the game, they're honestly fairly decent. Units have a ton of life in some of their animations, including these fun little execution moves that can happen when a unit kills another in melee combat. And there is no way to escape that the opening cinematic of this game is fucking stunning. It's so good at getting across the feel of battle between Space Marines and Orcs and honestly is just so good. The voice acting is all around fantastic. While some performances aren't outstanding, like the annoying voices of Chaos Cultists, Heretics and Warp Spiders, most are decent. Everyone in the story sounds pretty good, and all units in-game sound great. Space Marines sound militaristic and serious, no nonsense, no bullshit. Eldar sound arrogant, yet refined, with entities like the Dark Reapers and Howling Banshees sounding as specialized as they are in general, and often a lot of them talking about how old they are, just almost as if they're gloating, very, very humble braggy style. With the avatar of Cain having the most imposing voice in the game. Chaos sounds off its rocker and heretical, constantly talking about maiming the enemy and wanting to slaughter the opposition. Orcs then just sound funny, with really thick accents that make everything they say have a ton of personality, sounding crazy, daft, and often like they're having fun while also being really vicious and aggressive. Special note to the Orcs, while a lot of Warhammer I feel can sort of make Orcs feel too comical for their own good, this is a great example of giving them both comical elements while also making them a genuine threat both in gameplay and in the story. While their haha funny look they just got maimed by their own fucking giant monster, they also wipe out most of the planet's population and exceed in even taking over a city that the Space Marines have to take back. It's honestly great. And the game in general is great, the presentation is excellent, just like the gameplay and fun factor. Additionally, the army painter exists, allowing you to customize an army of your own, fitting the game that this is based on, and play those armies in the skirmish mode along with several presets derived from armies from the tabletop game, a fun touch. You can always save the replays of skirmish battles as well if that's your fancy. And that's it. That's Dawn of War. One of my favorite games of all time. A really fun real-time strategy game with 4 balanced and well-crafted factions, a fun campaign, and a lot of small embellishments to make the game so fun to experience. I would highly recommend it to any fans of real-time strategy games and anyone who's a fan of Warhammer 40,000, though they've likely already picked up the game, and if you haven't, what the fuck are you doing? But that's not the end of the story. Oh no, we have 3 separate expansions for this game before we get to Dawn of War 2. And why are they each getting a separate video, some might be asking? Well, despite being expansions, they have so much content they may as well be all classed as their own entirely separate games. So yeah, join me next time, or maybe 900 odd viewers, as we check out Dawn of War Winter Assault.